You are listening to Off Track with Martin Dwyer and Cornelius Lysaght.
Hello and welcome to the Off Track podcast with Cornelius Lysaght and Martin Dwyer. This is episode 3. Our theme this week is travel, but there'll be plenty of York chat as well.
Please remember there might be the odd bit of colourful language.
So we're back at the Draper's Arms, episode 3 of the Off Track podcast.
Here again, did we think we'd get to episode 3? I thought it would be shelved by now.
Well, yes. Be careful what you wish for. We're going to talk travel this week, but before we do that,
Well, that's our theme, isn't it?
that's our theme. We've got a theme. Yeah, this is terribly well organised in advance. But before we do that, I've got to ask you, in all seriousness, how are you? I'm not so worried about your knee, but I was a bit worried about you the other day.
Why?
Well, when your horse won the King George.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was mixed emotions, wasn't it? It was tough to watch. Sat on the sofa at home, and yeah, it should have been me, shouldn't it? When PJ was kissing that big gold trophy. It's one of the biggest races in the calendar, isn't it? So, yeah, gutted, but obviously I've got to say pleased for all the connections and William.
I was talking to another friend of yours, Goodwood, the other day, and I said I didn't really know what to say in the text. So, did you have lots of sympathetic text? Pile driver wins the King George. It should be you.
Yeah, lots of messages. People saying, oh, well done, it's fantastic. People saying well done to me. I'm like, well, I haven't done anything. And I was like, I'd rather have...
The jockey said you gave him all the instructions.
I did. We had a good chat in the morning. We had a good chat about how he was going to ride it and stuff. And to be fair, he was in agreement with the plan I had in mind, and it all worked out smoothly. I wish it would have happened like that when I was riding them half the time. But no, listen, brilliant. It's just, shame I wasn't properly involved, but that was
Any
great.
tears?
Well, listen, I don't cry. I cry twice. If my daughter sings, it makes me cry.
She's a good singer or a bad singer?
She's a brilliant singer, and she makes me cry, and then watching Everton makes me cry.
Well,
and that's it. The only two things in life make me cry.
But it's to have to, and we will get on to before the producers start shouting at us, we'll get on to the theme in a second, but I couldn't, that, regardless of the money, it's the prestige and it's the King George, it's pile driver that you're so associated with.
Yeah, and it's one more big win, on your CV. That's what every jockey wants. Every sportsman, you want to have a long CV and the best CV you can of, what you've achieved. And a King George, yeah, the money would come. The money would be nice, but no doubt the missus would have spent it before the end of the year. But that would always be there for life. And, so fair play to PJ.
It's a bit of a difficult situation for her because her dad trained, William Muir, part trainer with his partner. So on the one hand, absolutely delighted. On the other hand, thinking, oh God, what am I going to say to Martin?
She was treading on eggshells a bit, I think. She was delighted for her dad and her mum and dad and all the team. But yeah, she feels for me. And, actually on the subject of travel, when he ran, obviously I did this a couple of weeks before the Dubai World Cup. And Claire I was at home and Claire flew out with her dad to be with the horse when he ran in Dubai. So she obviously wasn't that concerned.
Well, so what about, pile driver, Phoenix Reach was in terms of your big traveller.
Yeah.
He used to get, he didn't really like running in this country, did he? He always wanted to go to Canada or Hong Kong or wherever.
We could probably do 2 hours on Phoenix Reach. I mean, he travelled the globe, didn't he? He came, it was great for me. He came at a time, really lifted me and transformed me because I was winning races all over the globe, especially in the winter because our season's finished. So racing people will look at the racing abroad, Hong Kong and Japan and places, the big flat races. So it kind of puts you in the shop window. So I'll be eternally grateful to Phoenix Reach and Andrew Baldwin, who trained him. He picked those races and he kind of cherry-picked the best Group 1 races abroad, and he won a phenomenal amount of prize money, and what a time we had.
Canada?
He won in Canada.
More than once?
No, we only went to Canada once. Canadian International, first Group 1 at the end of the season. So I didn't ride him at Goodwood. I got off him to ride...
Jocked off or got off?
No, I got off him to ride a horse on Marcus Tregonins in the Gordon Stakes, Glorious Goodwood, because I'd won on him at Ascot 2 weeks earlier.
What was the horse?
The High Accolade.
High Accolade, yeah.
So I got off him. The owner wasn't very happy with me, but I'd just won a Group 2 at Royal Ascot on this horse, so I couldn't really. And I got boxed in at Goodwood. Darrell Holland rode Phoenix Reach, came around the outside and beat me a neck. I was so unlucky, I should have won. And do you know what grieved me? Because the sponsors at the time were Peugeot.
Say grieved again. What grieved me?
What grieved me, and still does now, and Andrew Baldwin rubbed it in all the time. The winning trainer and jockey got a car for the whole year, a really nice Peugeot. It was like a sports car.
Right.
So Andrew got his, and obviously I didn't get mine because I didn't ride it.
Darryl Holland got one.
Yeah, and then every time if I got a lift with Andrew anywhere, he'd have this really nice car, and I never got it. So that rubbed salt in the wounds. Yeah, I got off him then, but I didn't ride it. He ran in a ledger, Phoenix Reach. Again, I rode this horse. I finished second. Phoenix Reach finished third. Jamie Spencer beat me on Brian Baru. Only good ride he gave to one of Aidan O'Brien's that year. How lucky was
So
that?
Brian Baru won that ledger.
Won the ledger.
And you were second high accolade.
I was second.
And Phoenix Reach
was third. And the owner said to me, right, you can ride Phoenix Reach from now on as long as you promise never to get off him again.
Right.
So I shook his hand and said, that'll do me. Because he had this campaign coming up to go to Canada and then on all around the world. Andrew had this brilliant plan. And it worked great, didn't it? We started off in Canada, we won there. That was quite funny, actually. I'll never forget that, because I hadn't ridden in America, North America before. And I won the race, fantastic. And I was interviewed just afterwards, and this lady on a pony galloped over, and she stuck the microphone. She said, she's got the, I can't do the accent, but we got winning jockey, Mar and Dwyer, man, hey, great win.
You can't do the accent,
no,
can you?
So she was Welsh. She said, so tell us a bit about your trip. And I said, oh, it's been a great trip, been fantastic. I left Heathrow yesterday, flight was on time. I said, got here, it's been brilliant, and we won the race. And
What's the expression on her face?
She went, okay. And I'm like, oh shit, you mean like trip round?
Yeah.
I know that now, but I didn't then, so made myself look a bit stupid. But that was the start of a fantastic.
And where else did he go?
He went to Hong Kong, Japan, won in Hong Kong, won the Group 1 in Hong Kong, won second in Singapore, and he ran the Japan Cup. That was experience. Japan was something else. And
so what happens in Japan? You get locked up the night before, don't you?
well, you do if you're there for the full contract, but as an international jockey coming in.
Right.
Hey, what about me?
International jockey. It's got a ring to it,
I
doesn't
thought I'd
it?
say that for you. Yeah. You'd say it. Yeah, Japan was weird. We flew in. I was with Andrew, and Kieran Fallon was with us at the time. He was riding for Ballytoyle. He had a load of rides. He was riding in the Japan Cup, and so I rode on the Saturday and the Sunday. So you literally just have to go there in the morning. You're locked up. You can't go anywhere. They take your phone off you.
Right.
And you're locked in a little room, and they're pretty strict. It's quite it's a good experience.
So little room, so like a little sort of dressing room of your own sort of thing?
Well, like a massive dressing room.
Right.
Has a gym, has
Right.
beds and everything.
Right.
But you're in there and that's it. And the jockeys were riding there all the time. They get locked up the day before. I don't even know why, but anyway, can you imagine? We're locked in there. There was myself and Fallon and Spencer and a few others. So you get a bit bored, so we were always messing about and stuff. But Japan was a good trip. I think he ran sixth in the Japan Cup. Picked up some good money, but we had some good. We were staying in the Grand Hyatt Hotel, really nice hotel, and
Only the best for international jockeys.
I remember myself and Spencer were on the top floor, really smart bar, looking over Tokyo. We're in there for ages, and Fallon turns up. I think it was Pat Venezuela or something like that, one of the American jockeys. He turns up with two ladies that we didn't know who they were. They seemed really nice, but he turns up, so he's brought guests to the table. So after a few hours of a few drinks and dinner and whatever, they just disappear and left me and Spencer with the bill. So and it cost an absolute foot. So we were like, I will get them back for this. So the next night, I went up to the reception and said, I'm trying to get hold of my colleague, Mr. Fallon. Can you tell me, I want to ring, which rooms is it? So they gave me his room number. So me and Spencer went and ordered 2 bottles of champagne, Dom Perignon vintage champagne, and we signed it on his room. And it was like 600 quid a bottle each.
Does he know about that to this day?
Well, he was checking out. When he was checking out, I was with him, and he looked at his bar. His bill was massive, and this on the end. And the bar was called the Brilliant Bar. And he's like, what's this here? They charged me Brilliant. That's 1,000 quid, over 1,000. Well, I said, oh no, that's an extra because you had a brilliant time. They've charged you for it. But he never really found out the truth. So hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast.
Because I find if you're in the media and you go overseas, and I hope we're friendlier when overseas journalists come to the UK than some overseas media are when we go from the UK there. What's it like with jockeys? Are people friendly?
Yeah, pretty much. You get spoiled, you get looked after well. But actually, the media are always in a different hotel to the jockeys, aren't they? Normally.
Well, they're not. They haven't got a brilliant bar.
No. Well,
Yeah.
but you normally have a different hotel. I don't think.
Well, it's the thing that I find is sometimes when you go overseas, there's a bit of suspicion about. It's a bit like if you're a southern-based journalist and you go racing sort of in the north, people look at you slightly as though they know better than you do. What are you doing here? I remember going to Ireland once, and there was this new trainer in Ireland. He trained on the side of a hill in Ireland, and he was called Aidan O'Brien, and everyone said he was doing quite well. And I went over to see him, and we went to see him. Myself and a colleague went to see him at Goran Park racecourse. And as soon as we walked on, all the Irish journalists were saying, "What are they here for? Why are they here? What's going on? What are you doing? What are you doing here?" And we were off to try and corner, and it was a case of cornering this trainer who was beginning to make. It was before he went to Ballydoyle, Aidan. He was training at his father-in-law's place, Joe Crowley's place, which is where Joseph trains now.
Right.
And I remember actually first ever interview with Aidan. You know how he sort of. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you're doing an interview with him and he sort of moves around. You start by talking to him there, and then he's gradually moved around, and so you have to move with him. And that was exactly the same that day at Goran Park. He's much chattier than he was then, but even so, he still liked to sort of boss his.
Do you think he's a bit mistrustful of press?
I don't think he is anymore. I think he was just
given the position he's in, he'd kind of be entitled to, wouldn't he?
But he's got himself completely. He says he's just very smart. He doesn't say anything he doesn't mean.
No, he's pretty
to
clever,
say.
isn't
he? So there are lots of trainers over the years that people say, he's a great talker in the media. Say he's a great talker, but if you actually analyse what they say, they only tell you what they want you to know.
Like all good politicians.
Like all good politicians, like all good operators. But I do remember that day walking into Goran Park and they say, "Why are they here? What's going on?"
So are press then very territorial?
Oh, I think so, but I think we.
It's not like that with jockeys. We welcome everyone. Everyone.
Well, so you based in the south of England, you went to ride at Carlisle or Thirsk or Musselburgh. You'd be welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, there'd be a bit of here they are, Southern Fairies, well, and, But I'm Northern anyway. But they say Northern Monkeys and Southern Fairies. Bit of banter, but no, everyone and the world over. I honestly, you go anywhere in the world, and I mean. I've been fortunate enough to travel, and I see jockeys that I haven't seen for years, and you bump into each other on the world stage, and everybody gets on well and respects each other. Because don't forget, like you hacks, you're just writing shit about people. We actually, don't look how offended he is. Look at that. Here we go. First one of them.
I'm a broadcaster, so I don't write.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Used to, but we're like competing in a dangerous sport, so we have to have respect for each other. So I do think we kind of mix well. But whenever we go abroad to these things, there's like all the media are in one place, and jockeys tend to be in another. But then we do mix, don't we?
Yeah. What about, you did touch on this before, but what about when you get a steward's inquiry overseas? That must get quite interesting.
Well, you have to know the rules. You have to make it your business to work out what the rules are when you get there. And normally they tell you, like, the American jockey came unstuck at Royal Ascot, didn't he? He didn't. He was looking behind as the stalls open. That was just stupidity, because you should know the rules. And you have to familiarise yourself with the rules and how things are. But, everywhere's slightly different. But normally, if you learn over the years as a jockey, you should know when you've messed up. And the best thing is just to go in, put your hands up, just be short and sweet and just say, "Oh, yeah." Because then you might stand a chance of getting less days if you just be honest. But when you're younger, you think you want to fight with everyone, take on the world. It's like most sportsmen, isn't it?
And what about international jockeys? Do they, like yourself, do they fly you around in private jets, or is there a certain amount of comfort in?
Depends who you. Having ridden for Andrew Baldwin for years, as you know, he likes to fly economy everywhere. He likes his jockeys to fly economy, miserable.
Serious?
Yeah, always flies economy. I mean, that's Andrew. I remember I flew to Italy to ride for him. This was quite funny, you can ask him about this. And myself, Andrew and Annalisa.
His wife.
Yeah, we flew over. So we're 3 economy tickets, only a short flight anyway.
Yeah.
3 economy tickets squeezed in, blah, blah, blah. So on the return leg, we were in the airport, and Chris Catlin, do you remember him?
I remember, yeah.
He was over riding for Mick Shannon, so Mick's flying in business right at the front. And so before we were boarding, I said to Chris, let's have a look at your ticket. And I swapped the tickets then. So I gave him mine, right? So we boarded the plane. I let them get on first, and they kept walking down. And Andrew said he sat down at least, and Chris sat down beside him. And Chris looked at his ticket, and he's looking at them and going, what are you doing here? He said, I don't know, because on the way out, I was sat near the front. And he went, now fucking Dwyer. So he stood up. And I'm sat at the front with a glass of champagne.
You're
Yeah, and he's trying to fight the traffic of people back up the front. And he's like, and he couldn't get back to the front. And they ushered him back, so he sat down next to Andrew, and he was not happy. So I had smoked salmon and champagne, and that was quite a nice trip back. But we are lucky. We do get. I mean, I've flown first class and business class to.
So if you went to Hong Kong, for example, would you be going? Presumably, the Hong Kong authorities sort you out, do they?
Normally Cathay Pacific, normally business class or first.
Right.
It's great fun. There's always a gang of us. I remember once we were flying out. I think it was Willie Haggis. He'll go mad, but he's not a
Did
great.
you just say Willie Haggis?
Yeah, William.
Call him
William
Oh,
Haggis.
he'll go mad just about that.
What are the chances of him listening to this podcast? But he was on the flight to Hong Kong
33 to
once,
1 and drifting.
and he's not a good flyer. He's not a good flyer, and he took some herbal stuff to make him sleep.
Yeah.
He said, I don't want to be woken, I'll fly back if I can get to sleep. And he pulled this thing, and he put the blanket over him, his earmuffs, and said, that's me, go asleep and get through the flight. So when he's asleep after 10 minutes, he had little pouches with the stickers on. So Frankie got
Which pouches? What do you mean?
get
pouches?
stickers on, so if you go asleep.
Oh,
so
do you? Oh,
we
right.
put them all over him.
Right.
Please wake me for breakfast. Please wake me for lunch. Please. So we put them down the side of his seat, these stickers. Frankie did it. So we blame him, and he kept getting woken up by the stewardess. He went mental. But that was quite funny. But he'll go mad about that. He is not a good flyer.
Is he really?
Well, he was involved years ago with a plane. Do you remember there was a load of them going to Kentucky for the sales?
Oh, did it drop quite a long way on the?
I think the brakes failed.
Right, there
How'd
was
you
a
know?
drop. No, you mentioned.
And they
there
had
was
to
a
land Fort Lauderdale or somewhere, land on the longest runway and just run itself. I'm sure that was. I might be wrong, but that's why William was so terrified of flying.
What's the story about? I think it's in Australia that because jockeys are obviously not the tallest people in the world, and some of them look very well, yeah, and so, but not all of them, and some look quite young. Isn't there a story about a flight attendant giving crayons to a
I don't know.
thinking
I
they
haven't
were a
heard that
child?
one. I haven't heard that one.
No. But who was it? It wasn't you that got pulled over by the police because they thought you were joyriding, was it?
That
Was
did
that you?
happen to me. I did get arrested on a plane once. At Heathrow,
Go on.
yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, I was flying out. I wasn't riding. I'd had a few drinks in the bar, but I wasn't drunk. But I'm getting on the plane, and I'm looking for my seat, and I seen a friend of mine at the back, and I said, "Hi, Jack," and they arrested me.
Da 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 da. Bomb bomb. But you did get stopped. You did get stopped in a car because you couldn't see over. You couldn't see properly over the steering wheel.
No, I'll tell you what that was. So we are going back to the very beginning.
This is still travel.
Yeah, it's travel. Apprentice jockey Ian Baldings.
Right.
I was 18. David Griffiths, you remember him?
Yeah.
He's a
Still
trainer now.
trains now.
Trains in Doncaster. We were best
Train
friends.
that good horse that used to win at Goodwood all the time.
Yeah, what was his name? God, take cover.
Take cover, yeah.
So anyway, me and him, we had a ride in the apprentice race at York. We both had a lightweight to do, so we literally starved ourselves. We drove all the way to York in his little Vauxhall Nova. Had a little spoiler on the back. I don't know, you know what it was like back then. And we were starving. We drove all the way up there. We rode in this kids' race. I think I finished second. Probably should have won. And then on the way back, we were
beaten very far.
Far enough to rule out jockey error.
Good luck.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
So on the way back, we were starving, and we were, we were kids at the time. We were 18, and I think he might have been 19, or he was 18. I was 7. I don't know. Anyway, so we stopped at a garage on the A1, pulled in. He had a baseball cap on. We went in, put some petrol in the car. Went in, we got a load of sweets, crisps, Lucasades, Mars bars, got everything just because we were starving like idiots instead of having a sensible meal. And we got all this stuff, paid for the petrol, got back in the car, down the motorway, 5 miles down the motorway, police car comes flying past us, pulls in front of us, another one flying past on the side, one the other side, behind, and they just like, and Griffiths looked at me and went, fuck's sake, so what have you done? He said, have you robbed stuff from that shop? I went, I haven't done anything. It was like terrifying. And he just pulled us over to the side and he got us out and licence and blah, blah, blah. And And they were like, oh, we had a report. The woman in the garage rang the police and said that there's 2 kids joyriding down the motorway. And we just gone in and bought a load of sweets. So, yeah, that was pretty frightening, but it was funny. When we told them the story, they were laughing, and they kept us there for about 10 minutes. Any tips?
Any tips?
Yeah, normal. And then hopefully we don't run into them again, because we'd probably give them a few losers.
I remember coming back from Perth races. And I was based in the south of England. Perth race is the most northerly racetrack, and this is so long ago that Jamie Osborne was a jockey, and he was the dashing, successful. He was never champion jockey, but he was always riding plenty of winners. And Adrian Maguire was with us as well. So both Adrian and I had asked for a lift back south, and Osborne said, "Yeah, that's fine. We'll share that. We might share the driving." So we get in the car at Perth, just going over the viaduct. You go looking down over the city as you're leaving off towards Glasgow. And suddenly, snoring, Maguire had gone to sleep. So he was obviously determined that he wasn't going to be driving. And Osborne turned to me and said, well, he's fast asleep. We'll share the driving. And I said, well, I hate to tell you, last week I got banned for 3 months for speeding.
Oh, you didn't
so
tell
I
him
couldn't
that
drive.
before.
I didn't tell him beforehand either. So poor old Jamie had to drive all the way back. We got stuck in a traffic jam somewhere, Lake District, that kind of area on the M6. It was baking hot. It was the end of August, I think. And it shows Mr. Enterprising Osborne. He's always had this reputation of being quite enterprising. It was baking hot, and there was an ice cream van. This isn't a joke, this is true. There was an ice cream van on the motorway as part of the traffic jam. And he went back to the, because we never moved for an hour and a half. He got out of the car, he went to the ice cream van, he bought all the ice creams, and then he was going to the cars selling the ice creams at inflated prices. Yeah, this is 25, mid-90s sometime.
Good thinking, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, but Osborne's, he's always been sharp, hasn't he?
I have to admit, being off at the minute, being off for a few months now, I'm not missing the driving up and down the motorways.
How many miles do you reckon a year when things are going well?
35,000 more.
Right.
Franny Norton does about 80, I think.
He's based in Liverpool, isn't he?
He's based in Liverpool. He lives in Knowsley, and he drives.
So he goes to Hamilton, he goes to Salisbury,
Brighton,
he goes to Brighton,
Goodwood,
go
can
wherever.
you imagine? I mean, the price of fuel now.
And he's always smiling.
Yeah, well, he's happy, and he's from Liverpool. We're happy, not like you older Tonians.
Well, let's not go down that route. But we'll come on to the. We're recording this just before the start of the new Premier League season. We might end off with a prediction. But what? So it's 35,000. Do you do it yourself, or have you got to the stage now of maturity amongst riders that, as an international rider yourself, that you can occasionally have someone to do a bit of driving for you?
Well, I did have. There's a girl that drives a lot for me, but not on a regular basis. I mean, we normally share lifts quite a bit. Actually, I mean, there was always a thing, like we always share lifts, and it was kind of like a rule. Like any young apprentices asked a full jockey for a lift, not a problem. You always you wouldn't, you wouldn't expect, all these kids need to get to the races, and some of them can't drive yet. So you always have to look after the young jockeys. Like William Buick literally lived in my car. He was like, I drove him everywhere when he first started. And you always...
Because he was at Kingsclear and you were with the Baldings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He started there. So he always started. I took him everywhere racing. And then as a full jockey, if you live in the area, you just take it in turns. And you just give each other lifts and take it in turns. And
who pays for the petrol?
Well, you pay. This is the thing I'm coming on to.
Right.
So this is obviously it's a different... Yeah, normally if I drive, I pay for the petrol, simple as that. If we stop for coffees or anything you'll get that. If you come with me, and then next week you'll drive, and you just take it in turns. Yeah. But when a certain ex-jockey, now racing TV presenter, came over from Ireland...
Oh, really? I wonder who that might be.
Yeah, well, I don't want to mention any names.
No.
His second name rhymes with our producer's name.
Our producer is called Type Terry.
Terry,
so it rhymes with Terry, yeah.
So, so I don't want to mention any more, but yeah.
And his first name is the only thing he has in common with St Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, well, and his initial is Doctor.
Right.
So when he came over from Ireland, he didn't know the rules. So he offered me a lift to Newmarket one day. I only had one ride, and so I said, yeah, no problem. So he gave me a lift to Newmarket. And then we're halfway there, and he said, but you'll get the petrol. Yeah, and I thought, he's joking, isn't he? I'm thinking, and I didn't know him that well at the time. And he said, you'll get the petrol. He kept going on about it. And then on the way home, he had Nikki was driving him, and she said, "Oh, we're running low on petrol." He looked over, he said, "No, we'll get to the next garage." And we literally got into this garage on fumes, pulled up, and he filled up, and he's like, "You're going to get this, man." I'm thinking, "He's fucking serious? I'm going to have to pay for this."
Yeah.
So I went. I thought, "I should pay, I'll get it, but I'm not going to lift off him again." So I went in, literally paid. It was like 115 quid. He had a big BMW, filled the tank up. Then he's getting Lucasades and
Imagine what it
crisps.
is now.
I mean, he put everything on I said, so he's put all his stuff on the counter, and I said, and sarcastically I said, "Anything else, Doc?" And he went, "Oh yeah, actually, I'll get a packet of Polos." Put them on. I thought, he's taking a piss or what? So then I went, "Just get it, you know what I mean? Show me class." So I went to pay for it, and he went, no. And I thought, he's joking. Do you know what I mean? He's joking. He went, no, don't. So come on, he went, "Get me points first." Got his points on his card.
Oh, the nectar
the
stuff.
thing.
Yeah.
And then he went and sat and got all his stuff and the petrol. And he had one ride. It cost me money to go to it. So, I thought, you know what? So I did the decent thing. Photographed the receipt and put it on a on a WhatsApp group we were in with Spencer and everyone else.
So they all knew.
He got that much grief, right? He got that much grief after a week. I went into Lingfield somewhere, sat down on my peg, and there was an envelope on my peg. Yeah. And I was like, "What's this?" And Musty the valet said, "Oh yeah, Fran put that for you. Dr. Berry put that for you." Oh shit, I've given his name. Right. Anyway, he put that, and it was the exact.
He can't sue.
It's the exact amount with
Really?
coins in it and everything.
Oh,
to
really?
£116.48 or something. He went, "Oh, did you get that live?" I went, "What?" He said, "I was only joking. I said, "Shut up." I said, "You need," and I threw it back at him. I said, "I'd rather take the piss out of you for the next 10 years. So.
Why do you call him Dog?
Well, because he turned up from Ireland. I've never seen a man like him. He had obviously his racing bag, and we all have a wash bag with your stuff in it, deodorant and stuff. But he had another bag with all his medicines. He had medicines for everything, things you shove up your nose and ears, and supplements and painkillers. And honest to God, so I nicknamed him the Doctor, and it got about a little bit. Right. And I remember even Gerald Mossy came over and asked him for some painkillers. Right. He said to him, "Oh, hello, hey, Fran, I have a headache, I need some painkillers." I'm not good at his impression.
You do Scouse brilliantly, but some of the others.
And he said...
he's French, isn't he, Mossy?
Yeah, very French. Yeah. So he says, "Oh, okay, sit down, let's have a look at you." And I was like, honestly, he said, "What type of headache is it?" And he's like, he said, "Okay, take 2 of these now, take these home with you, and if you still got a headache tomorrow, take them again. And if it carries on after a few days, I think you need to..."
You are joking.
I swear to God. Honestly, that's what he was like, the Doctor. That's why we call him the Doctor.
I sat next to him in the media centre at Cheltenham this year, and I had a headache on one day, and I did say to him, because you having told me that he might have some paracetamol, and he asked me what level of headache it was. I said, "Oh, very minor." Oh, he said, "These will do you." But I must admit, I thought I didn't realise it was quite as expert as he obviously is.
He loves it. He's got every pill and potion known to man. He once gave me some of that new Viagra. Honestly, I said, "What do you do this?" He said, "Oh, well, you put it in your tea, stops your biscuits going soft."
And the gags only get better.
Or worse.
Or worse. Final word on Fran. If you'd known a few years ago when you were filling up his car with petrol that he ends up being such a distinguished presenter on racing TV, would you have believed it?
No, who would have believed it? But obviously they do things differently in different countries. In Ireland, they obviously charge each other to have petrol. And but his career's progressed now, isn't it?
Do you like watching him on telly?
He's very good, isn't he? Very good. I have to say that, don't I?
He gives a few winners as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does like to study. He always did that when he was riding. He had his racing post, and it was always like, you knew if it was his paper, because he had like 3 or 4 different coloured pens, colour coordinated.
Even when he was riding?
Yeah, bit of a bore like that, but he is a good presenter now.
I'll tell you what, talking of travelling, I've always liked, because this was slightly an excuse when I was at school for having a day off to go to the races or whatever,
Sorry to interrupt, which school did you go to?
That's irrelevant to this story. But the thing about it was always that Fontwell, Beverley, Thirsk, Bangor-on-Dee, wherever, going to those meetings, I found my geography is better than it was better than it might be, and that was always my excuse to the geography master, to miss geography. Well, I'm learning about the British counties.
It's a good point. My geography wasn't great when I was at school. I could never find the classroom. But no, it did improve when I started riding. Yeah. But although many of our journeys together, I found were quite difficult.
Who's Jenny's?
Whenever we travel together.
Go on.
From the races. Well, we always took us longer to get home than it should have done. I think we stopped in a few public houses.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, let's not go into too much detail. Let's instead go into the detail. I think it's my favourite. In fact, I'm going to read it. Where's my phone? I'm going to read an article from the Times newspaper must be about 20 years ago. I was a columnist on the Times at the time. And there was an article about you. The headline is, "What a way to carry on." And there's a cartoon here of, we'll come on to the cartoon in a second. It says here, because there was a lot of flooding going on in the country at the time, the Environment Agency is unlikely to be recruiting any jockeys for its flood department. And not just because limited height could pose a problem in deep water. Martin Dwyer and Steve Drown provided a clue as to why, when they misjudged the severity of flooding blocking a road close to Southall, as murky waters swirled around their waists, Dwyer perhaps reflected on the wisdom of entering a floodplain with only a chum called Drown for support. And there's a cartoon here. "Hurry up, I'm a man with a life-saving ring. Hurry up, I'm standing up on a jockey's shoulders as you emerge from the flood." So what was that? So
How many years ago was that? When was that?
I don't know. It was a long time ago now. It was quite well written, really.
I have to say it was well written. I've got that in my downstairs loo.
Have you really?
Yeah. Your name is in lights.
And so why did you? So you just decided the flooding wasn't as bad as you thought.
That was Drowney's fault. I mean, the name says it all, doesn't it? He's now a steward. But yeah, we rode at Southall Racecourse in the deep winter, December winter. It was a horrendous day, and we left there going dark early, and there was a big sign. And the back roads out of Southall, I mean, it's the back end of nowhere, isn't it? The other side of Nottingham. And we drove the
beautiful little town, though.
There's some lovely places around there. But we drove through one of the villages, the back way out to the motorway, and then we and it was pissing down. It'd been rain and storms. It was bad, wasn't it? And there was a massive sign, "Road closed, do not enter." Big red sign, and there was cars turning around and coming past. Of course, being stupid jockeys, thinking we'd take on the world, we were like, I looked at Drown, he said, "Yeah, go on, you'll be all right." So I had this big old Peugeot thing then, and he went, "Go on." I was like, "Yeah, come on then." You know, there's cars going back, but we decided stupidly, and there was a road, and it was just flooded. You couldn't, but it didn't look as deep.
Right.
But we didn't know there was a dip in the middle. So we started going through it, and Drown, he said, "Just keep the revs up." So I went, like, stupidly, flat out into it, and then when we hit the deep bit, just a wave come over the bonnet and just seized the engine up completely.
Right.
Just the engine.
And how deep are we? Is the water coming into the car?
It was as high as the doors, so we couldn't open the doors. So we're stuck there. It's going dark. It's freezing cold. We're in the arse end of nowhere, and I'm like, "Oh, well done, nice idea." And "Oh, you didn't have to do it." So we're arguing, and now we're like, "What are we going to do?" And there was no one for miles. So it was so cold. I went to open the door, the water came in, so we put the window down. Luckily, we had wine windows then. Wound the window, climbed out, took our shoes and socks off, and we pushed it out of this thing, out of the water, onto the dry bit. Took us ages to do it. Got back in, shivering, and then some fella come along in a pickup, like a local guy, thankfully, and he's like, "Oh, you idiot, you shouldn't have gone through there. Everyone knows round here, that's a dip in the road." That always happened. Like, "Oh, yeah, we're not from round it." He said, "I'll tow you to the pub and you can ring someone," because there was no service. So he's towing us to the pub. Half a mile down the road, we get to a T-junction. He stops, and I didn't. And I went straight into the back of him, knocked him out into the road and smashed the front of my car up. And so he looks at me and went, "What the fuck did you do that for?" I went, "I can't feel my feet." I was numb from my knees down. I couldn't feel the brakes or anything. So I was just, and we were stuck there all night waiting for the AA, and my car was totally written off, and I'd bumped the back of his. I mean, what a carry-on that was. But that was a good little
So if you see road flooded ahead now, you're a bit more...
I'd like to think of a bit more sensible now. But I think that's the jockey mentality, just stupid, and think, you look at something like that and you go, well, it's a challenge. We'll get through it, you know. But and he's a steward now, huh? Says a lot.
I remember you telling me the story, and I thought, oh, I've got this column in the Times. That would make a really nice piece for... And I thought, there's only one problem. My column doesn't come out till next Tuesday, and Blabbermouth Dwyer will be telling everyone this story. And someone else had written it already, but it was only the Racing Post, so I could live with that. And they did quite a fun cartoon to go with it as well.
It was good, so yeah. Actually, I've still got it in my downstairs loo. It's a great memory.
Funnily enough, I must have done a few things about flooding, because I did a story about the aforementioned Perth racecourse, flooding there. and there was a cartoon of a man in a rowing boat that went in the Times, and the bubble coming out of his mouth is saying, "Clerk of the Course, Perth here. The going is good underneath all this water," as he was rowing, and they've got that in the weighing room at Perth now.
How long did you write for the Times for?
5-6 years. It came.
Why did they stop having a racing correspondent?
No, I wasn't. The late Alan Lee was the racing correspondent, but I was just a columnist.
Oh, okay.
They had, in those days, there was money to burn in newspapers. Now, as we know, there's limited coverage of.
Is that because everything's gone digital?
Everything's gone digital.
And there's so many great podcasts.
There are so many great podcasts. There's so many great TV channels.
Yeah.
Two dedicated TV channels to racing. There's no other sport.
I thought it was only one.
Could boast. Well, let's be honest. There is another one. I can't remember its name. Let's be honest. The sport. We grumble about the coverage in the newspapers. Well, certainly those of us in the media do, and the amount of coverage is right down. But having said that, there are 2 dedicated TV channels. There are all sorts of podcasts. There are lots of other ways. ITV's coverage as well on terrestrial television every weekend. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Would you do another column if you were asked to?
It's great fun. It's very enjoyable.
I do remember a lot of your pieces were sort of light-hearted.
It was meant to be a bit light-hearted, a bit of I think the technical term is a diary.
Right.
So it was just sort of stuff that, and it's amazing how you could turn a completely an innocuous incident in terms of buying a pound of cheese or something. You could, with a bit of thought, you could normally change that into something that
elaborate, exaggerate.
I used to say polish up the story a tiny bit. But there were some very, very good fun times.
Well, look, so many things have changed in racing, and one of them being,
well, the media is one of the biggest.
The media. Well, there's so many things, but one of them for us as jockeys is this 1 meeting a day rule now.
Right.
Which for years we did 2 meetings up the summer.
So you're in favour of 1 meeting a day?
I am, yeah.
And what about most of your colleagues?
Well, there was a survey, and I think it was near enough 90%.
Right.
Were in favour of it, but there are a few, I think a few younger jockeys, which I suppose they never really experienced. Yeah, never experienced it, and I think, but the majority wanted it to stay at 1 meeting a day. Of course, it was brought in because of COVID.
Yeah.
But it was.
But that's a few. So that's happened, and no saunas anymore as well because of COVID.
Are gone,
so actually, inevitably there were changes caused by COVID. Not all of them were actually bad.
Well, exactly. I think a lot of industries and businesses thought that, didn't they? They thought, well, do you know what? We've lived with this now. This actually should be the status quo, you know. And I just think, things have to change, don't they?
Yeah. But these just a sort of thought on the one meeting rule. I remember going with you and your father-in-law, William Muir, from Warwick to Salisbury. And Warwick to Salisbury, if you think about it on a map, is not a ridiculously long way, but it's across country. And actually, nobody who arrived, you were riding at Warwick and then riding at Salisbury when there was flat racing at Warwick. And nobody, when we arrived at Salisbury, was in a fit state to do anything because the journey had been stressful. William was at the wheel. Even he was getting a bit irritated. I was getting irritated because you were getting on your toes and you had rides. So actually, I can't see.
Well, listen. The stories about doing 2 meetings, we could be here all day with those.
What's the maddest 2 meetings you did?
Well, there's been so many. I mean, where do I start? I mean, we've missed. How nobody's, in a serious way, how no jockey's been killed rushing around from 1 meeting to another. You're always tired. You've been up since early hours in the morning, riding in the afternoon, go on to the evening meeting. You're not, like you say, you're not in a fit state half the time. So just the travelling is the aggro of it, the M25, and then.
Do you have much flying?
Oh, yeah, we used to fly a lot now. I mean, you couldn't afford to do it now for one. The price of fuel.
But it's so expensive now.
But we used to hire planes, we used to hire helicopters. I mean, we've hired, I remember me and Hughesy hired a helicopter to go to York one day, and it picked us up from Thruxton Airport. So Hughesy hired it through
somewhere
near Salisbury.
Right.
So we arrived for this, and he was a bit late. Sorry, this was a plane.
Yeah.
And he landed this plane. Holy God. It was like a lawnmower with wings on it. And there was only a seat at the front and 2 at the back. Me and Hughes crammed into this thing. Never been so frightened in my life. The pilot didn't have a clue what he was doing. We got halfway up to York, and no, Newcastle it was, and the engine kept cutting out. Literally, we'd be flying along, it'd be like, and it'd be, and it was like, we were just shitting ourselves. And then he'd be trying to pull the thing to start it again, and we literally, we thought we were dead. He ended up gliding in and landing. He found some airstrip, and usually was shaking that much when we got off it. He found an airstrip, and he got down, and it was a blockage in the fuel pipe. So we got off this plane, and we were pretty like, because we literally thought we were gone. The pilot was covered in sweat, and he was shitting himself. So we landed, and Hughes got off the plane shaking, and he brought out this aviation fuel, started to fill it up to run it through the pipes. So usually we've survived that. So usually decides to lean on the wing and light up a cigarette. I just ran. I just thought this and the pilot.
It's not going to end well.
No, the pilot rugby tackled him. He had grazes on his elbows and everything, where he rugby tackled him to the tarmac. Yeah, I mean, we've had some, like, there's been some really crazy. Another one with Husey. Funny, we went Ascot, Royal Ascot, flew in a helicopter to the evening meeting. So you leg it down in your breeches, put your blazer over, bag, whatever. And there's about 3 or 4 of us in this helicopter. Yeah. Jump in, you know, mad rush. Everywhere was a mad rush. It was ridiculous when you think about it. And we're flying off from Royal Ascot to ride in low-grade races at Lingfield in the evening somewhere. No disrespect, but it was crazy. And so we got in this helicopter and we're like rushing like mad. You got your earphones on so you can talk to the pilot. And we're in this chopper, and then we're about to take off. We just close the door, we're all squashed in. And we're taking off, and then we're just moving away. And Hughes says, "Lads, shit, the door's not closed, the door's not closed." So he's holding on to this door. And he's talking to the pilot, "But the door's not closed." He went, "Oh, I'll have to land to close it, unless you can keep hold of it." And we're like, "You haven't got time to land, we'll have to keep going, we're not going far. Usually just keep hold of it." So you imagine he's holding the force of this door. So he's holding it, and the sweat, after about half an hour, the sweat's pumping out of him. And he's going, lads, you have to help me, I can't feel my arms. And he's thinking, you let go of this door, it's going to go up into the blades, and we're all dead. Yeah. So he's holding this door, and he's holding it like this, and he's crying with the pain. He's like, "You're going to have to help me." We wouldn't help him, we were just like laughing at him. And he literally held onto this door for like an hour and 10 minutes or something. And when he got off the plane, he was like this, he was exhausted.
No fit state to ride.
No, he was a mess. And we were all laughing at him, and the pilot said, "You didn't think I was serious, you idiot." He said, "It's on a latch, it won't come open. It was only ajar." He said, "You don't know." He said, "I wouldn't have kept flying if it was, you know, that dangerous." And usually he didn't ride a winner that day. I mean, the state of him. And we wouldn't help him either. I mean, that's hilarious, but sometimes you have some sort of...
I came back on a plane from Market Raisin to Stratford, last day of the jump season, mid-1990s. Big battle between Richard Dunwoody and Adrian Maguire to be champion jockey that year. And Dunwoody won, but won by 2-3 wins, something like that. And they'd both ridden 190-something winners. And we were flying back from Market Raisin to Stratford, because there'd been an afternoon meeting at Stratford, gone on to Market Raisin, and we flew back to get cars, etc. at Stratford. And although Maguire hadn't been champion jockey, he'd been given all this champagne. So we get onto the plane, and obviously Maguire had been miles clear at one stage. And I remember he sat down the plane, he said, "Who's crying?" i.e. no one was crying. You know, he was proud of what he'd achieved. And Norman Williamson was with us. And he was trying to open one of the bottles of champagne as we were about, and the pilot said, "Do not do that." If he'd been able to rugby tackle him, he'd have absolutely rugby tackled him that second. But Emma Lavelle was telling me the other day that she was flying to Newcastle races from Oxford, and she hadn't quite taken into account that when you fly in a hired plane, a private plane, whatever you want to call it, from a small track to a small airfield to a track, you don't actually have to do passport control, etc. And she felt a bit of a divvy. She said she arrived there an hour and a half before the flight, all ready to show her ID.
Did you ever fly on Hannanet?
No. So that was Richard Hannon.
Richard Hannon Senior. He had his own plane. His own plane, and it was 5 seats in the back and 2 at the front for the pilot.
There was room for a drinks cabinet as well.
There was a drinks cabinet at the very back.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most dangerous plane I've ever flown in.
Because
you get on it and get off it skinned. You could go.
Well, playing cards.
Playing cards. I mean, the fun we used to have. So you'd ask Mr. Hannon if you could have a lift. If the plane was going to York or Newmarket, is there a seat? And then you say, "Yeah, no problem." So They give you, and then the invoice you contribute to the fuel and whatever, the costs of it. So you pay, and we used to use it all the time, and it was fantastic. But if the boss was on there, the rules were you don't get on unless you got a bottle of champagne for the way back.
Right.
So there'd be a couple of jockeys, Richard Senior, Junior used to come a lot, and then owners as well. And it was great fun. But you could go with him to somewhere. You could ride. You could have a good day. You could have 5 or 6 rides, ride 2 winners, and still come home at a loss because you've lost playing cards on that frigging plane. So sometimes it'd be cheaper to drive, but what fun. I mean, they'd open the champagne on the way back, and he even, at one point, fitted a little bit of a hose pipe with a funnel on it at the very back. So if you got caught short, you could crouch down and...
Oh, right.
But listen,
too much information.
But if you're drinking champagne and you on the way back, it was needed. But I remember Jimmy Fortune put a cork in it. So the outside of the plane, he'd put a cork in it so it wouldn't...
So it wouldn't work?
Yeah, so somebody ended up with wet trousers. But,
yeah.
But they were good days. I mean, I remember coming back with them from somewhere, and we got to Thruxton to land. Sometimes he'd land on the Gallops, sometimes Thruxton, and we got to Thruxton.
So you can land on the Hannon Gallops?
Yeah, I used to land at the top of the Gallops, drive it down, and we get out at the pub.
Right.
And then it lived in a hangar by the Gallops or at Thruxton. But they were great days. That Hannon Air, the stories from there, the times. But I do remember I was well up. I was about 600 quid up playing cards, and we got to Thruxton. The wheels came down, and the boss said, "Mike, take a turn." And we had to fly around Thruxton until he'd won some money back. I had 600 quid and got off with 50.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. What happy memories.
Great times.
You are listening to Off Track with Martin Dwyer and Cornelius Lysaght.
They're about to get lunch served in the Draper's Arms here in Ealing, London W5. So
they're getting your glasses ready.
They're getting your glasses ready. I can assure you. Funny, the time of the year, quite a lot of people in the media. Obviously, jockeys can't do this, but quite a lot in the media between Goodwood, which has happened, and York, that's just around the corner. They tend to go off on holiday, but actually, you've got things like the Sugar Cup. You've got things, all sorts of things going on at the moment. And York just around the corner, and that has to be one of the most enjoyable 4 days of the year, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna miss being at York. York is one of those festivals. We've had, sounds bad, but we've had all the serious stuff, the Ascot, Goodwood, and York is a serious festival.
Yeah, it's very serious.
But I mean, it's like now's a bit of downtime, like you say. Normally you relax a bit, but as a jockey, you're just gearing up for the
Racing League
next.
as well, getting underway.
Yeah, but you're just gearing up for the next festival. York being the next one, and it's a bit of for sudden jockeys, for us, it's like we go up there for 3-4 days and book hotel rooms, and it's a bit of fun. We meet up with people, and we stay away all together, and that can be a little bit of a holiday. Obviously, we're riding, but York's is a special place.
Remember when Royal Ascot was there one year?
Oh, do you remember? Was it? Yeah.
2000.
Do you know what? We hired a house.
2005.
They were reconstructing, building the stands.
Yeah, they were doing the big development at Ascot.
At Ascot. Yeah, well, we hired a house, load of jockeys, myself, Steve Drown. We hired a house for the week, and it was like...
There was no moat or any flooding around the house.
No, it wasn't. Listen, we didn't go to Eton, it wasn't that grand.
It was like... I'm thinking the flooding.
It was by the river, but it was a road like Coronation Street.
Right.
Cobbled terrace, and the guy was a racing fan, and we rented it off him. He was there the first day, and the first morning he had croissants and racing posts and everything laid out for us. But we had literally just had the keys to this house, paid him. But after 3 nights, I mean, there was there was 3 bedrooms in there, and we paid him for that. But after about the 3rd night, it became the house. So we had like 18 people stay there.
Party time.
Literally, there was people didn't have rooms booked, and people would turn up, jockeys, and they'd go, "Oh, Drowning and Dwyer have got a house." So I mean, what these people must have thought on this street. I mean, there was a time we threw Sam Hitchcock out the front door with no clothes on, and I mean, it was just that was a mad week, but it was a great part.
How did Sam take that?
As you can imagine.
Not very well.
No, I think he slept in. He actually slept. There was a cupboard that opened. He slept in that for a couple of nights,
right?
Because we ran out of beds and stuff. But that was a good week, wasn't it? I mean, York's a great city.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I'm going to miss it.
And so looking forward to international stakes and the Yorkshire Oaks and the Nunthorpe and the Ebor as well. So looking forward to that. And then, so that, I'm just trying to get my dates right. Which is first? Is York come before the start of the Premier League or after?
We are after, yeah. Next Friday, tomorrow. Friday's the first Premier League.
Tomorrow as we record this, yeah.
Saturday, Everton play, first game, Chelsea.
You
Are you going to that?
No, unfortunately not.
Thought you were going.
No, can't go. So let's hope there's not too much crying. You said that Everton make you cry.
I know. Well, I was all excited, and then I found out Calvert-Lewin was injured.
Yeah, I'm on I picked up the paper on the way here, and the first thing I saw in the sports pages.
What we're going to do
out
is
for 5 or 6 weeks.
maybe we can have Rondon as the target man. We just kick the ball at him and hope it goes in.
Yeah, and it's good. We start off with Chelsea, don't we?
Yeah, big concern.
Yeah, and especially as Liverpool are unfortunately on a bit of a roll, and they start. I think they're Brentford to start off with.
Well, the easy game to break them in, wasn't it? That was all pre-arranged, obviously.
Yeah.
They're playing that silly cup. What's that silly?
Was it called the
Sophie.
something Shield?
I don't know. Nobody cares about that.
Who won it?
I don't. Well, Liverpool, Man City didn't really.
They said their second 11.
Yeah, they didn't really. So they won that.
Felt sorry for them.
They were playing that last week, so they give them an easy first game.
Yeah.
You are listening to Off Track with Martin Dwyer and Cornelius Lysaght.
We've got lots to be optimistic about as well.
I can't even say his name. Tarkowski.
Yeah, him as well.
He's looking all right. And I know I was getting excited, thinking, we're building something from the back forward, and then Mikalenko's improved as well. And I was just thinking, if we get Idrissa Gray back, we could be looking all right. And then, but Calvert-Lewin out, it's a big loss. But we just
bad for him as well, because he needs to get in the swing of things for England, doesn't he?
He needs to start dressing properly, concentrating on his football. I mean, you've seen some of his attire.
Yeah, him and Tom Davis.
I mean, they
dressed up like
great footballers. We've got a cop on. I mean, it's as bad as wearing a tweed suit everywhere.
Yeah. Well, anyway, neither of us are doing that. We're going to have to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for listening. Just to be absolutely clear, this is the Off Track podcast with Martin Dwyer and
Cornelius Lysaght.
And if you've enjoyed it, which we hope very much you have, then please tell people about it. Please subscribe, and then you will never miss an edition. And fingers crossed, we'll be back again in the not too distant future. Until then, enjoy the sunshine.
You've been listening to Off Track with Martin Dwyer and Cornelius Lysaght.